In the second half of the 1990s, budding game creator Masahiro Sakurai attempted to make a more beginner-friendly fighting game as a counter to the combo-centric traditional fighters we've all known for eons now. And while the initial idea of Dragon King the fighting game could have been a solid outing, he would come to the realization that bringing in familiar Nintendo characters as playable fighters was a golden idea, and developed a demo in secret with Nintendo legend Satoru Iwata. In 1999, the first Super Smash Bros. Game was released, and gaming history would be made. If you're familiar with my streams over the course of the past year plus, or any of the content that I've put on the internet for almost 9 years now, I've made it no secret that Super Smash Bros. Is one of my all-time favorite video game franchises. I messed around with the original as a toddler in one of my first gaming experiences, Melee had a strong place in my childhood, Brawl carried me through middle and high school, Smash 3DS and Wii U gave me some fun in college, and my adulthood has been blessed with the cream of the crop that is Ultimate. Now, you may come to me and ask, "Hey Stefan, if you love Smash Brothers so much, who do you main?" And to that I say, actually it's pronounced Steven. And then I'd say, my main is random. But seriously, I don't like the idea of mains all that much. With how many different characters there are, sticking to only one or a few fighters just feels kinda boring to me. So I just play as everyone. Though I do have fighters I like more than others, and some I consider favorites, which is where this video series comes in. I've wanted to do a countdown video for eons now, and I've yet to see a VTuber do it, so why not give it a shot? But I'm not satisfied with just a top 10 or 20. This is Smash Brothers, my favorite series. If I'm talking about my favorite playable characters, I'm talking about all of them. A couple of quick things to note. As I have also said in past live streams, I am not that into the competitive side of Smash Brothers. Like, at all. Not to say there's anything wrong with the competitive scene itself, I just prefer the fun, chaotic side of Smash way more. So if you're looking for a serious, analytical, and objective look at the entire Smash roster, you're in the wrong place. Maybe being a random main will offer a little interesting perspective on the Smash roster, but that might be overselling myself a little bit. Branching off of the not objective thing, this list is entirely my opinion and my opinion alone, based solely on fighters I personally enjoy playing as, with the exception of one fighter I do genuinely believe is objectively bad, but other than that, purely opinion-based. Naturally, there are gonna be fighters placed in places you won't agree with, and neither of us is objectively right or wrong in that regards. Remember, internet, there is a clear and distinct difference between fact and opinion. Between this is so-and-so, and I believe or think this is so-and-so. I'd also like to note that while I am formatting this into a countdown, my placements are not truly set in stone as the numbers might suggest. Even right now, I'm changing my order around at least slightly based on how I feel. I contemplated doing a tier list style video or even a live stream, as I feel like the tiers make my stance on fighters a bit clearer by putting them into groups rather than a whole connected list. But I worried that would make it harder to sell that this is not based on the competitive scene, you know, since that's the kind of thing that tier lists are used for. Also, again, I've always wanted to do a countdown video, so there. At the end of this video mini-series, I'll put a tier list image up so you can get a visual for how I view this ranking. But that's more than enough rambling from me. Let's move on to rambling about Smash Brothers characters I like. And now you'd probably say, Did you really just waste a few seconds in your Smash video just to tell people how to pronounce your name correctly? And then I'd say, yeah. Okay. Okay. So I've been racking my brain around how to open this specific entry for some time. It doesn't really matter how I say it, this is the bottom of the list. People are gonna be upset no matter how rationally I put it. So I might as well just peel off the band-aid. I don't care if you genuinely like him in or out of Smash. I don't care how much better he is in Ultimate compared to how he was in Melee. I don't even care if he's proven to be competitively viable in tournaments. Pichu is terrible. Any Smash-savvy gamer can tell you that Pichu was notorious in Melee for being an absolute joke. Not even the funny kind. Carbon copy of Pikachu in terms of moveset, way smaller, while faster, he's also the lightest character. Janky as all hell to hit him considering his size, and most notorious of all, his electric attacks hurt himself. It's supposed to be a nod to the anime and Pokédex entries that describe how Pichu is unable to properly handle the electricity it produces, so it zaps him right back. But not even the Pokemon games do that. And do you know why? Because having a moveset that hurts you almost as much as your enemy does not make for an optimal fighting game character. They did change this in Ultimate, of course. Rather than hurt himself with all of his attacks, he only hurts himself with most of his attacks. So much improvement. Now, I truly believe that any character in Smash Brothers, any character, can be great in the hands of someone willing to put in the time and effort to figure them out. And that's even true for Pichu, clearly. But I cannot fathom why anyone would want to put in the effort to work around such a massive handicap when there are so many other characters that he can accomplish the exact same thing he can. Hell, that Pikachu can. Even characters that I can't wrap my head around or have a more obtuse strategy to use, I can justify using more than a fighter who's this fragile. Pichu is the only truly bad character in the history of Super Smash Bros., and you cannot change my mind on that. You still here? Good. Let me stress that, as I said before, Pichu is the only character that I consider to be objectively bad. Everyone else I think is perfectly fine, and I have no reason to question anyone's sanity for maining them. No way to go but up from here. The rest of the lower section of my rankings consists of characters that, while they're not terrible, they are characters I don't have a whole lot of love for. Whether it's because I have a hard time wrapping my head around how to properly use them, or because I think they're kinda boring. Isabelle is at least not the latter. The Animal Crossing reps have interesting methods of combat to set them apart from standard fighters, with a hodgepodge of tools and decorations, and even the wacky ability to pocket projectiles, which I never really use because it's kinda tricky to pull off in the heat of the moment. Isabelle in particular gets decent mileage on her Void Trap, and especially her fishing rod, which is way too fun to whip out. But with funky weapons and unique attack styles comes a bout of awkwardness in trying to use them. The attacks don't lend themselves to as simple of combos as I'm used to with more standard fighters, and I feel like I'm flailing around with my rod more often than I'm actually using it. Take that in whatever context you want, I honestly don't care. Isabelle is more suited to turtling and zoning, while I'm more accustomed to just getting in your face and beating the ever-loving shit out of foes. Kinda hard to do that with a dinky mallet. She is adorable, she and Pichu have that in common, but besides that, I can't see a reliable reason to use her more than other fighters with wild moves that I can actually figure out. I'd say it's pretty rational to conclude that my opinion of Villager would be more or less the same as Isabelle, again, at least to me. A lot of what makes Isabelle as unique and tricky to use is all but a repeat of what Villager brought to the table in the previous Smash games. The question is, which do I prefer over the other, and why? Well, obviously, since I've talked about Isabelle first, Villager is the one I prefer, but still, why? I bounced back and forth between the two for quite a while, and I was content enough to go with Isabelle just for the cuter design and the fishing rod, but I've come to learn a little something about myself and the way I go about using characters like these. I have become a wee bit more comfortable with using Villager as he's been around longer, but that also comes with using specific moves more often. Timber, while slow and cumbersome, is a fun little build-up attack with a fun payoff if your enemy is dumb enough to fall for it. But the real highlight for me is the Lloyd Rocket. Using the gyroid as a trap is all well and good, but the rocket gives a bit more versatility, especially from a distance. You could just fire away from across the stage, or you could use it as an offensive horizontal recovery. In my time ironing out this messy, fluid list of mine, I've come to learn that having the extra range option for a character I barely know how to handle is a big enough difference in lasting or even winning a fight. Isabelle may be the face of mercy, but I'd rather have the one that does not look it. Plus, those memes back in the day were pretty funny. As much as I miss the old days of video games when companies would release complete games that didn't include inclusions I need to pay extra money for, Smash Ultimate at least got a great pool of DLC fighters. It is wholly inaccurate to say that any of these characters are bad, but one of them has to be considered the worst. Unfortunate side effect of how lists like these work. Everyone has their own opinion on what's considered the worst, but this list has my opinions, and that's what we're gonna talk about. And I narrowed it down to 2 fighters for 2 different reasons. I fought myself viciously on this decision, and I still have to say, it feels very wrong to say that Steve is my least favorite DLC fighter. As one of seemingly few gamers that cannot bring himself to care about Minecraft, I have to recognize that Steve and the various Minecraft skins make up one of the most incredible fighters I have ever seen in a platform fighter. Sakurai and his team went above and beyond by implementing so many nods and touches and mechanics ripped straight from Minecraft. Even the stages had to be updated to accommodate for the mining and building mechanic. That's fucking rad, I don't care who you are. Problem that I have with Steve is something I've basically covered with the Animal Crossing reps, but to expand further, I had to consider with a character like Steve 2 things: the novelty of such a different moveset and the practicality of it. How crazy and inventive and unique a moveset is, and how much effort is needed to fully utilize it and thrive. I'm all for going balls to the wall with attacks and gameplay mechanics, but there's a limit to how much I'm willing to figure out and be able to use the character successfully. With Steve, in order to really get the fullest out of him, I'm basically playing Minecraft rather than Smash Brothers in order to mine enough materials to use all of his attacks or to upgrade his primary weapons. And if I didn't already make it clear earlier, I don't want to play Minecraft, I want to play Smash Brothers. I can wrap my head around using Steve more than the Animal Crossing characters, but there are so many other characters I would rather try to figure out how to win with, even in the DLC alone. But hey, this is the closest I'll ever get to seeing a fighter in Smash Brothers named Steven. God help me if his full name is spelled with a V. I still don't really like giving the impression that I think Steve is the worst DLC character in Smash Brothers, or even just any impression that he's a bad DLC character, especially because of how unique and interesting his playstyle is. Again, I don't think any of the DLC is bad by any means, but each bring their own level of hype or ire depending on the fans. This can change from when the character is announced to when the character is released. And when it comes to actually playing as these extra characters, I can confidently say that Joker wound up impressing me the least out of all of them. The fact that he got into Smash at all is incredible, plus Persona 5 is highly regarded, and Joker is a very popular character in the competitive scene, considered top tier by many. But as I am hoping to make myself clear in these videos, I am not like most Smash fans, and I am certainly not like any Smash fans that play seriously. While I get an inkling of the idea that people are able to use the Joker to the best of his abilities, I don't quite understand how exactly people wind up getting that good with him when I actually play him. A statement you will hear multiple times in this countdown, I promise you. Joker is one of many high-level fighters that I feel like I just kind of flail around with when I use him. He has a solid set of attacks, especially when Arsene is out, but another con I have with Joker is how exactly his Rebellion gauge works. Getting a boost in stats through taking damage isn't unheard of, that's Lucario's whole shtick, but unlike Lucario's aura, Arsene is temporary. That gauge goes down after he's summoned, and he vanishes when it's depleted. So if you don't take advantage of the boost and aren't careful with how you fight, you're not gonna have that big of an advantage anymore. Say what you will about which is more effective and powerful, but I'd personally rather have Lucario's aura and only worry about losing the boost when I die, rather than when a UI tells me I'll lose it. The only reason I decided to rank Joker higher than Steve, despite thinking he's not as interesting, is the fact that I can at least tell I'm trying to play Smash Brothers when I'm flailing around as him, and not some other game. Grabbing people with the grappling hook is fun, though. Hey, if I get some fun out of Isabelle's fishing rod, might as well get some fun out of the grappling hook, too. That's all I'm saying. A little fun fact about me, or I guess not so much fun if I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I used to be extremely picky about characters that I think should or should not be in Smash Brothers. For many years, I had a huge stick up my butt about the Smash roster, and in hindsight, it made me seem not as fun to talk about Smash Brothers with. This narrow-minded attitude also affected my ranking, and a few characters were ranked lower than they really should have been because of it. Rosalina was arguably the worst off, because I just thought she was an overrated Mario character, which even I admit is weird in terms of design and personality. She's right up my alley, but nah. I've done quite a bit of growing up in this past decade and have opened up my mind quite a bit, and even redid my ranking to focus on my thoughts on the fighter's playstyle rather than some arbitrary merits for being in Smash Brothers. Unfortunately for Rosalina, this only raised her from being third to last to just right up here. I gotta give her respect for taking the Ice Climbers and Olimar's playstyles and evolving it to what it is with the Lumas, even if I don't understand how they could make that work on the 3DS and not the Ice Climbers. But in practice, I'm doing about as much flailing as I am with Joker. I can clearly see there's a strat with moving the Luma around, but I can never figure out how to take full advantage of it in the heat of battle. Couple that with a limited set of specials that I can't really use well enough, and you get a character I'm not ever really thrilled about using. At least her attacks have a decent amount of range and size to it that I get more mileage with her than Joker. Space Mommy's got at least a little going on. When I watched older Smash Brothers videos talking about wanted characters, it seemed like a lot of people really wanted Simon Belmont, or any kind of Castlevania rep. Seems to me that the people at Bandai Namco felt the same, seeing how much music and spirits were put into the game. Hell, Castlevania is the only third-party franchise in Smash to have an item. Bet all you people that don't play with items often even know that. Simon was another character I was stupidly skeptical of as a youngin', but now I definitely see how he changes the game with a unique moveset. His whip gives him crazy range in all directions, and his sub-weapon specials throw in some additional angles. In a platform fighter where projectiles are usually scarce, having ranged characters really jazzes up the formula, and I love that. It was one of the things I loved about characters like Raditz and Emmett Graves in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. On the other hand, long-range characters like that are notoriously difficult for me to use, purely because I'm so used to having to get up close and personal, as I said before. I get it. Spending your career dealing with Halloweenies year-round requires more personal space, but in Smash Brothers, you're supposed to invade personal spaces. Ranged characters like Simon don't have a lot of options for close range to help balance things out, but it's tricky to change up my strat just for Simon. Hell, I even forget that he has cool sliding kick attack and a diving kick. They're very helpful with the range thing. What's wrong with me? Except it's not just for Simon, cause Sakurai and those crazed Castlevania fans at Bandai Namco decided to give us 2 Belmonts to mess around with. And Richter's one of only 2 fighters in Smash Ultimate who I had absolutely no idea who they were before. Maybe you think Sakurai put Andy Richter in Smash before Conan O'Brien, that goddamn maverick. Well, considering Konami's attitude towards their biggest IPs in recent years, I think Castlevania really needed the win. But as this is the first Echo Fighter we're talking about, now is as good a time as any to talk about why I have a bit of a problem with the label of Echo Fighters. They're fighters that are close enough in design and moveset to basically be an alternate costume turned honorary fighter. Some characters are Echo Fighters, others are not, and ones like Richter and Daisy make sense, but Dark Samus and Lucina have a few differences and are still counted. Why aren't Dr. Mario and Young Link Echoes? And don't even get me started on fucking Chrom and Ken and how different they are from Roy and Ryu. It's frustrating for OCD brains, alright? Anyway, Richter and Simon are tied on this list, because the only real difference between the two are the Holy Waters. Simon uses fire effects, and Richter uses aura effects, which only changes the color since the aura isn't actually a part of his body. But if I had to pick one over the other, I'd say I prefer Simon purely out of style. Richter is yet another generic anime pretty boy with safe, boring palette swaps, while Simon's got a gruff, rugged He-Man thing going on with cool, dynamic palette swaps. I'm fine with anime sword fighters, but sometimes we need something different, you know? Sakurai has gone on record to say that there are no real rules for picking characters, just that they have to be fun to make and play. I would argue that there are other, albeit unspoken, rules, such as only video game characters and characters from games that have made at least a minor appearance on Nintendo consoles. Joker actually almost kind of breaks that rule because they didn't announce that spin-off game for the Switch until the exact day they revealed Joker in Smash. I would have included in that list the first character from a newly represented franchise must be the main or at least flagship character, but apparently the devs for ARMS were insistent that Min Min get the slot over a character like Springman. Thinking about it though, Min Min is probably the best ARMS rep purely for the fact that she has close range options in the form of her deflecting kicks. They're limited, but it's something to make her playstyle a little more familiar for Smash, but aside from that, you basically have to play ARMS properly to utilize her. Unlike with Steve, I have a much easier time wrapping my head around trying to play ARMS in Smash Brothers as opposed to Minecraft, and the more simplistic style of her long punches makes her comparatively easier to handle than the Belmonts, though not by a whole lot. It's also that simplicity that really brings Min Min down for me. Her moveset is literally just left and right punches from a distance, with a couple of kicks thrown in here and there. The different arms are a nice touch, I especially love the Gigavolt, and I understand that this is how an ARMS rep should play, but with all the kinds of fighters and playstyles there are, I would prefer something that stands out a bit more. And that's also easier to use. Being easier than the Belmonts doesn't mean being outright easy. Anyone else craving ramen? Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, doing the whole everyone is here shtick, actually works out great for a video series like this. Every character that has ever been in Smash up till now appearing in one game makes comparing everyone a bit easier, since I don't have to worry about hypothetically pairing characters from different games for comparisons. But as any technical Smash player will tell you, every character has had changes and tweaks made to them that makes them very different with each game. I am not one of those players, and from my perspective, the vast majority of the returning roster feels exactly the same as they were, with differences so small that no one should be able to tell that Bayonetta is so much worse in Ultimate than she was in Smash 3DS and Wii U. Wait, I'm getting ahead of myself, sorry. But there are some characters that do in fact have differences that are actually noticeable, and it does affect my ranking of them for better and for worse. And for the for worse part, it almost makes me want to go back to older Smash games to talk about them. I would be singing a much better tune with Olimar if we were back in the Brawl days. I admit I slept on Olimar in the beginning. I didn't even learn he was added to Brawl until I saw the instruction booklet on the day we got the game. A pleasant little surprise though. He didn't seem like much at first, but when I ran through Classic mode with him, I actually really liked beating the shit out of people with a huge army of Pikmin with various abilities. Smash 3DS and Wii U came around, however, and limited Olimar to 3 Pikmin in a fixed order, presumably for the 3DS, but they carried this over to Ultimate, and he just doesn't feel as powerful as he once was. Playing as Olimar recently, I realized he's still pretty decent, and needing to pluck more Pikmin is a small price to pay for just throwing them around willy-nilly. But not having 6 in whatever order they choose to come out, and what feels like a limited moveset, lack of specials I hardly ever use don't help. I see just as much of a reason to play as Olimar as I do with the actual Pikmin games. If there is any plus side to post-Brawl Olimar, it's that the flying Pikmin make for a better recovery than the Pikmin chain. Oh, and Alf being here is neat too. Melee fans just love to talk about how amazing Super Smash Bros. Melee is as a platform fighter. And in their defense, it's a straight up fact that Melee is a significant step up from the original Super Smash Bros. Sakurai and his team made the effort to get bigger and better with Smash Melee, and the end product is a surprisingly technical sequel. Among the spectacle of all the mechanics brought in through Melee is an early groundbreaker for the fledgling fighting game genre. 2-in-1 characters. I haven't seen too many attempts at putting more than one fighter in a slot, but none were anywhere near on the Ice Climbers level. Even for the GameCube, seeing a computer mimic your inputs and bolster your attacks was wild to see. Or maybe that's just because I was 6 years old when I first played Smash Melee. Even without knowing anything about wobbling or chain grabbing like I didn't as a kid, the concept behind the Ice Climbers is one of the coolest things. I am kinda blowing smoke up their ass, seeing how low they are on the list. Not knowing how to do things like chain grabbing certainly helps with that, even if it's not actually impossible in Ultimate. While there is more to their moveset that I can understand than the fighters ranked below them, there's not so much that feels as effective without some extra practice. Worse yet is the fact that they kinda need each other to pose a threat in a fight. If you lose Nana, or Popo depending on your color, then Popo, or Nana, is substantially weaker, and you're gonna have a hell of a time trying to survive. The morbid lesson in relying on others, you gotta learn to be independent. Yoshi in Super Smash Bros. Is a curious thing. In most games, Yoshi is a beloved character, typically touting above average speed and getting some extra power and range in Mario games. He's a popular pick in Mario spin-off games, and yet when it comes to Smash Brothers, do you really know anyone clamoring to main Yoshi? Now, I don't see any reason to think Yoshi's an outright bad character. While not all that fast, he's a lighter heavyweight with decent attack power and versatile specials. Tossing eggs at people is fun, and everyone loves a good ground pound. Hell, I relied on Yoshi to finally beat the last event in Melee to get Final Destination almost a decade ago. Yes, I'm bad at Melee, what about it? But outside of some occasional good wins, I've never really been all that crazy about Yoshi, and it's hard to really explain why. As a kid, I could just say the fact that he doesn't have a proper recovery special is enough, but considering how stupidly high his second jump and that he gets a little extra air with his egg toss in Brawl and Beyond, that's kind of a non-issue. Yoshi is just, I don't know, nothing all that amazing? Not terrible, not great, just meh. I don't know if that means I should rank him higher or lower. Maybe I should just take solace in the fact that there are characters that are harder to use, or are just Pichu and outright bad, and say that's good enough to keep Yoshi here. Oh well, at least he has other games that people like him in. Being raised on Super Smash Bros., but not knowing a thing about the competitive scene until high school must make me an interesting case study. Or maybe I'm just blowing smoke up my own ass again. But still, it's wild playing a game series for so long and be adjusted to a certain way of playing it, and then discovering the internet and seeing everyone else have a drastically different viewpoint on most things Smash related. The idea that people willingly played with items turned off? I've never recovered, even to this day. This, of course, translates to many opinions about characters that we will discuss even more later, but the first sticking point is, of course, with Melee. When you learn about the competitive Smash scene, you learn about Melee, and you learn all about the top-tier characters, of which there are only, like, 5. And players use them exclusively. And one of those that was hyped all to hell was Fox McCloud. I knew my oldest brother loved Fox when he was a kid, and I certainly had my fair share of fun with Fox, but top tier? Perhaps in the right hands, like with Joker, but honestly, that's true about every character in my eyes, even fucking Pichu. In my hands, Fox is a versatile speedster with great combo skills that seem to require a precise, quick set of fingers to get right, which I do not have. I can kind of feel that Fox is not quite at his fastest after Melee, but he still feels a little too quick and unwieldy for the kind of attacks and combos he has. And I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you to remember what I said there, cause you will need to call me out on my hypocrisy later in the list with this, so you're welcome. He's certainly not boring, but a little more control can go a long way in my being able to use him in a serious fight. Maybe a little more stopping power in that laser blaster. The chip damage is helpful, especially for 1v1s, but So for Smash 64 through Brawl, I had an excuse in the form of not being terminally online. So what's my excuse with Smash 3DS, Wii U, and Ultimate? Well, in regards to competitive gameplay, I will always prefer casual, chaotic fights with items and stage hazards, and no amount of competitive sway will change my mind on that. But you would think with how much Smash content I watch online, I would have a better grasp on what people are talking about with the technical aspect of Smash Brothers. But there must be some kind of disconnect with my brain and my finer motor skills, at least a minute one. People would not stop talking about Bayonetta when they got to play as her, and she was notorious for being absolutely broken in Smash 3DS and Wii U. Apparently. I know what people are saying, I saw her reveal trailer, I can see people play as her, I saw the fucking Smash Ultimate Invitational, I know there's something there. But then I play as Bayonetta myself, and I'm about as brain dead as I am with any other fighter, or worse. Try as I might to do any kind of crazy combo, I can't. I'm losing lives trying Classic and All-Star mode with her, but not for the other DLC characters. And everyone says she's nerfed all to hell in Ultimate, but she feels literally exactly the same as she did before. The slowdown on witch time is shorter by a fraction of a second, but that's the only difference that I can see. I swear, I'm trying, I am really trying to understand what the hell you people are talking about. But to me, Bayonetta is just kind of okay. In 3DS, Wii U, and Ultimate, just okay. Solid in better hands, I can see, but I cannot get behind the hype when her Devil May Cry style combat just looks like this.